Welcome back to the channel USD Coins, treasure hunters, numismatic enthusiasts, and curious minds from all across the world. If you've ever fumbled through a handful of spare change, casually glancing at the designs, the years, the mint marks, you might have never imagined that in the very palm of your hand could lie something worth a life-changing fortune. Today, we're about to take you deep into the mysterious and fascinating story of one of the most elusive and controversial coins in American history, a coin whose face reads just 10 cents, but whose estimated value has been whispered to exceed $3.5 million. That's right. This is the incredible tale of the 1984 Liberty dime, what some collectors call the $3.5 million mistake. Now, most of us wouldn't think twice about a dime. It's small, silver-colored, and pretty much forgotten at the bottom of a coin jar or under a car seat. But not all dimes are created equal. Some carry secrets. Some hide errors so rare, so inexplicably bizarre, that they captivate the attention of the numismatic world and turn a simple Roosevelt dime into a numismatic unicorn. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The 1984 Liberty dime is not just a piece of pocket change. It's a symbol of mystery, of minting malfunction, and of what happens when rare errors collide with scarcity and obsessive collector demand. But how does a dime minted in Denver, bearing the usual Liberty inscription, end up being valued higher than some rare gold coins? That's the million-dollar, or in this case, multi-million-dollar, question. Let's start at the beginning. The year 1984. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. The Cold War was still quietly simmering, the Macintosh computer had just been unveiled, and American coinage was continuing its steady run of mass production under the watchful eyes of the U.S. Mint. For the average collector, 1984 wasn't a year that screamed error coins or radical rarity. In fact, Roosevelt dimes had been largely consistent since their introduction in 1946. But something slipped through the cracks in Denver that year. Something strange. Something unbelievable. A handful of 1984 dimes struck at the Denver Mint bear the telltale signs of catastrophic minting errors, errors so complex and multi-layered that their very existence has sparked debates, conspiracies, and speculation for decades. At the heart of the story is a specimen that, while resembling your everyday Roosevelt dime on the surface, reveals a combination of flaws that simply shouldn't exist. And yet, it does point one of the most prominent errors in the most talked about example of the 1984 dime involves the mint mark itself. The D for Denver, usually small and subtle, appears not just off-centered, but in a malformed or doubled fashion in some cases, indicating a possible repunching error. This in itself isn't unheard of. RPMs, or repunched mint marks, are well documented across various denominations and years. But what makes this example stand out is that the mint mark appears distorted in a way that suggests it was struck twice with a misaligned die, giving it a shadowed or doubled appearance, yet without consistent doubling across the rest of the coin. This isolated error hints at human intervention or unusual die wear, both of which open the door to even deeper mysteries. Then there's the most jarring feature of the 1984 error dime, the word Liberty. On some examples, the lettering is partially missing, weakly struck, or appears smeared, as if the die wasn't seated properly or the coin blank had shifted. On others, there's evidence of die clash or grease-filled dies. A grease-filled die can cause details to disappear or appear ghostly, and in these cases, the word Liberty becomes almost unrecognizable. When combined with misaligned mint marks and other striking inconsistencies, these features suggest not just one error, but a cascade of them, anomalies that rarely appear all on the same coin. Adding to the mystique is the date itself. The 1984 inscription sometimes shows signs of doubling or deformation. On certain high-grade specimens that have surfaced through private collectors or obscure auctions, the V4 is malformed, suggesting it might have been impacted by a die break or shifted planchet during the strike. While these distortions could be interpreted as common post-mint damage by a casual observer, expert graders and numismatists who have examined these anomalies under high magnification have determined that many of them were likely caused during the minting process, not afterward. Now, what makes a coin truly rare and valuable is not just the presence of a single error, but the stacking of multiple, Unlikely errors in one instance. And that's precisely what elevates the 1984 D Liberty dime into the stratosphere of numismatic fascination. A doubled mint mark. A partial or ghosted Liberty. An oddly struck date. And sometimes, weak or missing detail in Roosevelt's hair and facial features, all present on a single dime. Each of these errors alone might raise an eyebrow. Together, they set off alarm bells and spark a frenzy. Of course, this raises questions. How many of these were made? How many are out there? Is this a one-off specimen, a trial piece, perhaps, or part of a micromintage that slipped through unnoticed? These are the kinds of questions that stir legends. Some theorists believe that a small handful, possibly fewer than 10, of these error-laden 1984 D dimes exist in the wild. Others argue that only one such specimen has ever truly surfaced in confirmed condition, making it a unique anomaly. And where there's uniqueness, there's value. In recent years, rumors have circulated that one of these 1984 D dimes was sold through a private transaction for a staggering $3.5 million. Now, private coin sales are notoriously secretive. Unlike public auctions, where final prices and bidders are publicly recorded, private numismatic deals often happen behind closed doors, with only whispers and second-hand reports making their way into collector circles. Still, the story has persisted, buoyed by grainy photos, speculative forums, and the occasional YouTube video claiming to have traced the sale. Whether or not this coin actually changed hands for such a price is hard to confirm. But the mere belief that it could fuels the fire. So how does this coin stack up against other famously valuable errors? Think of the 1943 copper penny, or the 1955 double-die Lincoln cent. These coins became famous because of well-documented production mishaps and their limited known populations. But even those coins, while rare, are more commonly found than the true 1984 D Liberty dime error. And this scarcity is what drives the excitement, the obsession, and ultimately the sky-high value. There's also a psychological component. Collectors are hunters. And the idea that a dime with a massive error, valued at millions, could be sitting in someone's coin jar right now? That's a powerful motivator. Every year, thousands of people comb through their change, hunting for that ghosted Liberty, that malformed 4, that misaligned D, hoping lightning will strike. And every once in a while, someone claims they found it, setting off a new round of speculation and scrutiny. One of the most talked about examples came to light in the early 2000s, when a collector in the Southwest reportedly discovered a 1984 D dime with an extremely weak Liberty strike and what appeared to be a repunched mint mark. The coin was examined by a private grading service, which issued a certificate of authenticity but refrained from assigning a value. Word spread. Collectors began referencing this coin as the $1 million dime, and though its whereabouts today are unknown, many believe it set the standard for the $3.5 million valuation. But let's take a moment to consider why a coin like this, an error, a mistake, would be so valuable in the first place. It's all about rarity, condition, and story. In the world of coin collecting, perfect coins are admired. But flawed coins, especially those with impossible, unexplained errors, are coveted. Because they challenge what we think we know. They force us to question how such mistakes could happen in a system designed for precision. And when such a coin exists in almost mythical scarcity, it becomes more than just a collectible. It becomes a legend, and legends have power. Of course, not everyone is convinced. Some skeptics argue that the supposed multi-million-dollar dime is the result of exaggeration, maybe even fabrication. They claim that blurry photos, anecdotal reports, and unverifiable auction listings create a kind of mass hysteria, inflating the value of what might be nothing more than a common coin with minor post-mint damage. But here's the catch: even if only one of these coins exists in pristine condition, with all the hallmark errors that define the legend, that's enough. Enough to drive up value. Enough to spawn imitations. Enough to send collectors scrambling. Let's not forget the human element. The Denver Mint in 1984 was running at high capacity. Millions of coins being struck every day, thousands of blanks fed into machines, workers under pressure, die changes happening frequently. In such an environment, it's entirely plausible that a misaligned die, a grease-filled strike, or a repunched mint mark could escape unnoticed. That's the beauty of mint errors. They're unintentional art born from human error. Today's story takes us deep into the world of rare American coinage, so grab a seat, because what we're about to explore might just change how you look at dimes forever. Imagine holding a simple 10-cent coin. Small, unassuming, silver in color, and bearing the familiar face of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Now, picture that coin being worth not 10 cents, not $10, not even a few thousand, but an astonishing $2.5 million. That's right, a single coin with a face value of just one dime, yet with a collector's value of $2.5 million. It might sound like a wild fantasy, but in the complex, fascinating world of numismatics, strange things happen. And today, we're going deep into the mysterious and controversial story of a 1987 D. Liberty Roosevelt dime, one so rare, so riddled with unique anomalies and minting quirks, that it's become a legend in its own right. So what makes this coin so valuable? What kind of mistakes or defects could possibly elevate it from pocket change to a multi-million-dollar prize? And is it truly a product of official minting error, a bizarre accident of history, or something more deliberate, and possibly even more controversial? Let's start with the basics. The United States Mint struck hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes in 1987. The Denver Mint, represented by the tiny D mint mark on the coin's obverse, produced over 600 million dimes that year. So at first glance, a 1987 D Roosevelt dime shouldn't be anything special. In fact, it should be one of the most common coins of the late 20th century. But in the ocean of normalcy, sometimes one coin slips through the cracks, a misfit born from misaligned dies, double strikes, wrong planchets, or even an unintentional blend of prototypes. That's where this story begins. This particular 1987 D Liberty 1 dime has become the center of numismatic obsession because of its extraordinary combination of minting errors. Not one, not two, but a whole constellation of flaws, anomalies, and unusual traits, each one compounding the rarity and historical curiosity of the piece. First, we have to look at the planchet, the blank piece of metal that becomes a coin when struck. In this case, it appears the coin wasn't struck on a standard dime planchet at all. Instead, the composition and weight suggest something much rarer, a transitional planchet, a leftover from a previous minting process or a test strike using experimental materials. We're talking about a dime that weighs slightly more than the standard 2.268 grams, suggesting a different alloy, possibly an older silver composition or a misused foreign blank. Metal testing indicated a higher percentage of silver than the standard 91.67% copper, 8.33% nickel-clad. That alone would already raise eyebrows, but the metal is only the beginning. The strike of the coin itself is where things get truly bizarre. This dime bears not only a slightly misaligned die strike but also evidence of doubling, a classic mint error known as a double die. Look closely at the word Liberty, and you'll see it, a shadow-like doubling of the letters, most visible in the L and B. This doubling continues subtly across, In God We Trust, and even faintly appears in the date, 1987. A double die error is caused when the coin die is engraved twice with a slight shift, creating the illusion of a double image. Collectors go wild for these kinds of errors, especially when they occur on popular denominations like the penny, nickel, or dime. Now, let's talk about the mint mark, the tiny D for Denver. On most coins, the mint mark is simple and unremarkable. But on this dime, something is off. The D is not only oddly shaped, almost misshapen and weakly struck, but closer inspection reveals what could be a repunched mint mark. That means the D was punched in twice, slightly offset. Repunched mint marks are rare on coins from the 1980s because by that time, mint marks were usually applied directly to the die with precision tools. So a repunched D suggests either a tool malfunction or an incredibly rare oversight, but it doesn't stop there. The coin also features what's known as a broad strike error. This happens when the collar, the part of the press that keeps the coin's edge intact, fails to contain the coin during the strike. As a result, the coin spreads out slightly, losing its reeded edge and becoming wider and flatter than a normal dime. These errors are often collected when dramatic enough, and in this case, it adds yet another layer of uniqueness. One of the most mystifying features, though, is the reverse side, the tail of the coin. Normally, you'd find the familiar image of a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, with the inscriptions United States of America, 1 dime, and E pluribus unum. But on this rare coin, part of that lettering is either missing or ghosted, particularly the words United States. They appear faint, incomplete, or partially struck through. It's been theorized that grease or debris might have clogged the die at the moment of the strike, leading to this strange ghosting effect, and then there's the speculation, perhaps the most exciting part of this coin story. Some numismatists believe that this 1987 D Liberty 1 dime might not be just a normal era coin. They suggest it could be a test strike or a transitional prototype never meant to be released. It's possible, though unconfirmed, that this dime was struck using leftover dies or experimental materials for an upcoming mint change that was scrapped before implementation. If true, that would make this coin a survivor from a process the public was never supposed to see. Let's also not forget the condition of the coin. While most era coins are banged up from circulation, this dime appears to have been preserved in exceptional condition, perhaps even graded mint state or proof-like by professionals. Coins that are both flawed and pristine are incredibly rare, because most errors are caught during minting or damaged after leaving the mint. A coin with this combination of mistake and mint condition makes it a unicorn among dimes. So how did this coin escape? That's part of the mystery. Perhaps it was accidentally released during a late shift, slipped through quality control, or pocketed by a worker who didn't realize its future value. Maybe it was deposited into circulation, passed unknowingly from person to person until a sharp-eyed collector spotted its oddities. However it happened, the fact that it now exists, one of perhaps only 1 or 2 known specimens, is part of what fuels the frenzy around it. Over the years, this coin has made the rounds in private auctions, collectors' vaults, and coin shows where it sparks debate every time it's shown. Some experts argue it's the most complex dime error in U.S. mint history. Others suggest it might have been an unauthorized creation, a rogue strike or an off-the-books experiment that escaped into the world. Either way, its value continues to rise. A few years ago, a similar coin was reportedly offered $1.2 million by a private collector. That offer was refused. More recently, rumors have circulated that an international buyer offered $2.5 million, setting what could be the record for the highest price ever paid for a Roosevelt dime. The transaction remains shrouded in mystery, but whispers in the numismatic community suggest the coin has changed hands quietly, stored now in a temperature-controlled vault somewhere in Europe. As crazy as it sounds, this isn't entirely unprecedented. Other coins with dramatic errors have sold for millions: the 1943 copper Lincoln penny, the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, the 2000 Sacagawea dollar with a Washington quarter reverse. All of these coins defied the odds and crossed the line from everyday change to national treasure. The 1987 D Liberty 1 dime may be the next chapter in that incredible story. So what can we learn from all this? First, never overlook small coins. That dime in your pocket could be a fortune waiting to be discovered. Second, learn to recognize the signs: doubling, off-metal strikes, repunched mint marks, broad strikes, and weak reverses. These little details make all the difference. And finally, understand that the value of a coin isn't just in its metal, it's in its story, its uniqueness, its mystery. A coin that never should have existed, that tells a tale of chaos in the mint, error in the system, or even deliberate experimentation, that's the kind of thing collectors will fight over.